And welcome back, everyone, to its last call. Last call with the alcohol, only on the Last Call YouTube channel. And now joining me here, usually have fighters on the show, but well, fantasy football's taken over. It's now 24/7. And well, this man here, we got to get him on because, well, they do a great job. They let you know what's going on, even during the off season. And we're proud to have him here. I give you from Belly Up Sports Fantasy Football Show, I give you fantasy football expert. You just don't know him yet, but you're gonna. I give you it's Dan Maderff. So Dan, let's start off
Hey,
your free agency. By the way, great job what you guys do. I love what you do. Keep up great work first.
thank you.
So let's start off here at the free agency. Lamar Jackson. What should we expect? How much is how much value do you put in free on his fantasy value right now? And where, if you're a fantasy football owner, like where do you hope he goes? Do you hope he stays in Baltimore, or are there locations you hope he gets traded to?
Well, with Lamar Jackson, actually, it doesn't really matter where he goes. He's going to be a QB1 no matter what. If anything, if you're from a pure dynasty standpoint, I think you probably want him to go to the New York Jets. I mean, that's one of the few options that has been out there that I think is a legitimate location for him. And frankly, would have an upgrade in weapons with Garrett Wilson. A lot more. Hopefully, on his way back, him is up on Thursday. We're doing injury inquiries. We have our medical expert Brian Scott coming on the show and what we expect out of him. But so teams like that, yes, because there are a lot of teams that do have more weapons than the Baltimore Ravens, and there's not a lot of receivers out there in the free agency this year. So there's really few moves that they can do to actually improve their situation. I think it's more likely he winds up back in Baltimore. They still have the ability to franchise tag him. I doubt that they'll transition tag him because if they did want to trade him, they'd probably get more 2 first-round picks if they just franchise him anyway. But right now, if I was a betting guy, in which I am, the probability factor I think would be on Lamar Jackson staying in Baltimore, most likely, with the way this thing kind of plays out.
If you're a betting man, where does David Carr go? And does he, if depending on the situation of where he goes, is he a QB1 or a QB2, depending on what team he goes to?
So it's funny. We just did a video on him actually last week. And I first pointed out no matter what happens around Derek Carr, whether he has good weapons, good coaching staff, or doesn't in between, this guy consistently finishes as just a QB2. I don't know if that changes when he moves uniforms. I don't know if that matters. I think he just kind of is what he is. He's going to have games where he's hot, usually against a defense that's given up the 16th or more against quarterbacks in points allowed for fantasy standpoint. That could be a possibility where he goes off in those games. But against defenses that are inside the top 10, Derek Carr has very few top 12 performances. So I don't know if that matters. I don't know if that changes. I don't think it's going to be the Saints. I think if it was going to be the Saints, that would have happened already. They're the only team that actually had him out for a visit, and the fact that he didn't really wound up walking away with the contract even after he was cut, didn't really go back to them, wants to take his time. I don't think that's the situation for him, or at least he's trying to keep his options open. I think personally, I think Derek Carr, I think he wants to go to New York Jets, but I don't think the Jets want to do anything until they know that Aaron Rodgers is officially off the table or Lamar Jackson's officially off the table. So that's where it's kind of curious for me. Once again, pretty much for all these quarterbacks, whether it's Lamar Jackson, Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, the best situation is the Jets. They have the most weapons of the teams actively looking for one of these veteran quarterbacks and are not going to be in a position to have to actually draft somebody. They have those weapons. I do like the Colts. They do have some things there. I think I like Shane Steichen at least as an offensive play caller. We'll see how he is as the head coach. But that's the opportunity for any quarterback out there right now. I don't think it's going to be the Saints. If I had to place a bet, though, I do think it's going to wind up being the Colts for Derek Carr because I think the Jets are going to look for the other two options. And I think there's a decent chance they land an Aaron Rodgers, which sounds like he's on his way out the door.
So where does Aaron Rodgers go? Because you hear reports like, oh, he's fine. He wants to be traded. No, he doesn't want to be traded. I mean, he's as bipolar as they come, it seems like. I always joke. I don't mean any mental health, but he flip flops more than basically you can shake a stick at. So, what ends up happening with him? And if you're a fantasy football owner, do you want him to stay in Green Bay? Do you hope he goes with Oakland, or Are the Jets like the ultimate fantasy football option for him?
You don't, if you, from a fantasy standpoint, let's say, because, right now, the only people who care about Aaron Rodgers are dynasty owners who might have him on their roster. You don't want him to stay in Green Bay. We did a video about this earlier in the week, too, on our YouTube and our TikTok pages, talking about the fact that if he stays in Green Bay, even if Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs were to take another step up, it doesn't matter. The problem is that Matt LaFleur runs too slow paced of an offense where it caps the ceiling of an Aaron Rodgers, especially when you don't have a Devontae Adams. You still have those weapons that still have to develop on top of it. So I don't see a scenario in which we're talking about Aaron Rodgers as being significantly fantasy relevant again with this Green Bay team, short of them finding a way to land, let's say, a DeAndre Hopkins or a premier wide receiver to add into the mix. But the problem with that is that because of Aaron Rodgers' contract, if he does stay, Green Bay can't afford a guy like that. So I don't see room for that much improvement to go along with it. So, no, from a fantasy standpoint, you want to see Rodgers move on. I think from a Packers standpoint, I think you kind of want to see Rodgers move on at this point. You're not a Super Bowl team with him because of the contract. You can't really improve from what you were last year significantly enough, in my opinion. So you want to move on because you have to see what you have in Jordan Love. You have to see, are you rebuilding for the future? And if you are, you want to start that process now. You don't want to keep waiting and keep placing a Band-Aid on it because it only gets worse over time. Best fit for him? I mean, I keep mentioning the Jets. So outside the Jets, I don't know if there is a great one. Maybe it is the Raiders and he goes back and plays with Devontae Adams, but that's not a Super Bowl team with Aaron Rodgers. And I don't know if they really want to go down that path. Are they good with trying to make the playoffs? If they are, then okay, fine. But if they're actually trying to put their team in a position to win a Super Bowl, well, that's not Rodgers because you get his contract and you still have a lot of holes on the defensive side of the ball. I thought Tennessee made a lot of sense until they cut everybody else under the sun so that they could keep Ryan Tannehill. And it doesn't seem like they're going to move off of Ryan Tannehill now. Atlanta's too far away. So you actually start going down the list of teams, and there's not a lot of places for him to go. And I think that's one of the reasons why the New York Jets situation and watching what they do or don't do with Derek Carr right off the bat is so intriguing as far as what their eye is on. And for Rodgers, from him, where does he want to go? I think he wants to play one more year. I don't think he really cares if it's in Green Bay, to be honest. So I think as long as he gets his money and he's in a situation where he can at least make the playoffs in his last season to sustain his legacy, I think that's really all that matters to him.
Here's a question that's been pondering in my mind. And Jacoby Myers, Juju Smith-Schuster are both free agents. And look, I get Juju Smith-Schuster probably has more upside. He's been dynamic when he was Roethlisberger. He was good in Kansas City. Partly that's just a scheme. They do not, it's Kelsey and bust. Where does he go? Where do you hope he goes as a fantasy owner? And can he get back to number one status, or are the concussions and just the wear and tear too much for him?
Now, this is Schuster we're talking about, correct?
Yes.
Okay. With Schuster, I think his only real option is to go back to Kansas City for his sake. What we saw last year was the fact that nothing's changed with Juju. He hasn't suddenly gotten more healthy from the knee issue. He still can't get separation. He's still not great after the catch. He has to be in a great offense with a great quarterback in order to produce. Plain and simple. So if it's not going to go back with Kansas City, I don't see a scenario in which Juju's really all that fantasy relevant. Even with Kansas City, he was only fantasy relevant about, I think it was a little over 2/3 of the time. And even then, we're talking about a guy that was just a base floor of a wide receiver too. If you're getting 9 to 10 catches in that game. And he had a stretch there for about 6 weeks where he did that in a row. That's it. You still only get 80 yards. I think he only had one 100-yard performance. There's not a lot of juice with a Juju Smith-Schuster at all. So from what I understand is that he wants to go back to Kansas City, which makes a lot of sense. I don't see a reason why that doesn't happen because he will come back in and likely be about $8 to $10 million, be cheap. That's in a very affordable contract right now. And again, I go back to it. Look at this free agency class. Look at this NFL draft class this year. there's not a lot going on at the wide receiver position. There's not a lot of options out there for teams needing that position to get better. So I don't really see a scenario in which they don't bring back Juju. Now, do they say adios to Mecole Hardman? Do they maybe try to move on from Marquez Valdes-Scantling? Those things are very possible, but Juju makes sense that they can kind of keep him in there. The only caveat I would throw out there, and the only reason why they wouldn't, would be if they feel like Sky Moore has reached a point where he can kind of take over, because then you have a redundant situation, because you need Sky Moore to be able to man the slot in order to get the best out of him. So if they feel like he's ready to go, that they may not bring back Juju for that reason. But I haven't gotten the feeling that that's been the case to this point. So for me, it's Kansas City or bust as far as Juju's fantasy value goes. And I don't really see a whole lot of suitors going out to get him if he does become available, or at least probably would be an afterthought of anything else. Jacoby Myers, you mentioned him. I feel like the Patriots would have to be crazy to let him go. He's been the only dependable wide receiver, the only guy who's actually shown a real rapport with Mac Jones. And now that you brought back Bill O'Brien, who is the master of the slot receiver, a master of the dink and dunk, it'd be hard-pressed for me to imagine you're going to move on from Jacoby Myers when you don't have another receiver apparent. I mean, even the guys that are young, like Tyquan Thornton, he's more of a Devontae Parker replacement who actually is under contract. So maybe he'll replace Nelson Aguilar. But you need that slot guy. They don't have that guy. Jacoby Myers walks off. I don't see that happening.
Does Jacoby leave, Bo? Just because, as he said, Bo, this is a bad free agent class. I mean, those are the two best right now in Schuster and Jacoby Myers. The draft, a lot of guys who are talented but not developed. I mean, what are the odds you have like a Washington, a Carolina, a Chicago? But two of those teams I mentioned have silly money. They have quarterbacks who are young. Maybe could if they go, could their fantasy value get better just because if you're Jacoby Myers, Justin Fields is a better quarterback right now than Mac Jones.
Yeah, see, I don't know if I agree that Justin Fields is a better quarterback than Mac Jones right now, especially as a passer. Could Myers get like a Christian Kirk situation? I feel like that's what you're asking me here. Maybe it's possible because it is such a depleted position. I don't see it though, because we haven't had Jacoby Myers have an entire season where he's been in the top 20. He's been good at moments, but we haven't gotten to that point where Christian Kirk, at least he's had those moments. So you kind of understood why maybe Jacksonville overpaid for a guy like that. Myers doesn't really bring that to the table. He's a slot receiver with not a lot of upside down the field. So that kind of limits the contract that he's going to get. And right now, the going market for the wide receiver class for this group, it's only estimated around $12 million tops. I don't know if Myers gets that anywhere, even for a desperate team out there. So we might just see teams just like, you know what, bulk it. These are not the wide receivers we're going to go after. We're going to wait till next year, which, free agency and draft-wise, there's a lot more wide receivers on the table. Teams that you mentioned that have all that cap room, like a Chicago, have a lot of holes that they could fill besides the receiving room. Let's not forget, too, when it comes to a team like Chicago, they got guys like Darnell Mooney who are pretty talented. We got to see what Chase Claypool can be. I feel like he might be flaming out finally, but they do have some weapons in the building that just weren't healthy towards the end of the year. So there's some things we have to take in consideration there as well. But this idea that Mac Jones is not a good quarterback is funny to me, because this is a guy that had a great rookie season, considering he didn't have many weapons. He was dealing with Josh McDaniels on his way out the door, and there seemed to be a lot of issues inside camp, because that's why Josh McDaniels wanted to be on his way out. And yet he had a better year than Tom Brady did his rookie year. And yet the second year, he has a downfall, which I don't know that. Why should that be surprising? Who's he throwing the ball to? More importantly, did we think that this offense with Matt Patricia, a defensive coordinator calling the offensive plays, was going to somehow open up the offense? I know I certainly did not. So I don't know how much of this I hold against Mac Jones. In fact, personally, I don't hold any of it against him. I don't know what the guy was supposed to do. So, and even besides all that, you look at the numbers across the board. As far as a passer goes, and we're comparing Mac Jones and Justin Fields and Trey Lance to some of the other quarterbacks taken in that same draft class, Mac Jones is superior in almost every statistical category. So I think people are jumping ship on Mac Jones way too early.
Speaking of jumping ship, last year everybody jumped ship on Russell Wilson. It was a mitigated disaster. I mean, I'm guessing there are fantasy football owners who, after they drafted him, went, No,
Yeah,
is
he was a tough one.
yeah,
Good.
is Sean Payton the secret sauce? Does that expect Russell Wilson to get back to what he was because he now has a legitimate head coach who can tell him, Russell, you can't do that. Stop and flash for Super Bowl ring. Go, I know what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, Pete Carroll had a Super Bowl ring and flashed that, and it didn't really seem to matter. Is he the secret sauce? No, he's not the secret sauce. What he does do, and we're gonna be talking about. I talked about this a couple times in a video, and we'll be talking about this throughout the offseason. Like, this is gonna be a topic of conversation all summer long. What he does do is guarantee that there's a floor for this offense for them. He dealt with an aged out Drew Brees last couple of seasons. He had to deal with a Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill mixture in his last year, and he somehow still made the offense work. And from a fantasy standpoint, the quarterback wasn't always relevant, but everybody else was. Alvin Kamara was good. Whoever the number one option, whether it was Michael Thomas or if it wasn't Michael Thomas, then it was the tight end. I'm drawing a blank on it. You know, it was somebody mixed in. Somebody was always fantasy relevant. That's what he could do for the Denver Broncos, who do have a lot of weapons. I mean, I would suspect that, you know, a guy like Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, they'll be okay. The offense itself will have a floor. Russell Wilson will have a floor. He won't be terrible, but will he be fantasy relevant? I don't know if we have the answer to that question. We're going to dive into a little bit more. I don't know if he can get it turned around. Now, with quarterbacks, they usually age out a little more gracefully, especially compared to the running backs and wide receivers. But in Russell Wilson's case, we have to seriously ask ourselves, did he just fall off a cliff 2 years ago? Like, everyone kind of chalked up, okay, everything was weird in Seattle. He had to deal with the injury with the thumb, and they kind of gave him a pass for that terrible season in his last year in Seattle. But when we go to Denver, it wasn't much better. And again, he winds up in a situation where he does pick up a little bit of an injury, and we're dealing with Nathaniel Hackett, which was a litigated disaster. And we, you know, by the way, the Jets hiring Nathaniel, they better get Aaron Rodgers. Just kind of like go back to that. They better get him, because this guy has proven time and time again, outside of 1 year with Blake Bortles and Leonard Fournette, he has never been a successful play caller. Never. He didn't call the plays in Green Bay. So I don't know why anybody in Denver thought that was going to work. And I think they did make that move thinking they would be able to get Aaron Rodgers. And when they did it and got Russell Wilson, I thought they were hoping that'd be good enough. But we have to seriously ask ourselves, when it comes to Wilson, are you just over the hill? Are you done? Have you turned into Matt Ryan? Have you turned into Ben Roethlisberger, who went from like, okay, they're still good, they can still do their thing, to like, woo, they jumped off a cliff and like Thelma and Louise, and you never saw them again? I think we have to ask ourselves that question. Sean Payton will make sure that this thing doesn't completely fall off the cliff as an offense as a whole, but I don't know if he's the secret sauce to turn out Russell Wilson. It's one of the reasons I talked about Sean Payton. I wasn't really too thrilled about him wanting this job, because if this thing doesn't get turned around with Russell, you're screwed. You still have 2 to 3 more years that you cannot get out of that contract. You're stuck with him. And if he can't go, you're not coming out of the AFC West with teams like the Chargers, who I think got better with their hiring of Kellen Moore at the offensive coordinator position, and of course, still an up-and-coming talent with Justin Herbert. You're not better than the Chiefs. The Raiders, you'll be okay, because I think Josh McDaniels is an idiot. But that's one team, but that's it. You're supposed to be a Super Bowl contending team now, especially with that defense. I don't know if this thing gets turned around from a fantasy standpoint or from an NFL standpoint, other than it won't be as bad as it was last year.
All right, so let's ask the question that everybody wants to know: is Eric Bieniemy a good offensive coordinator? He's now in Washington. No more Patrick Mahomes. No more Andy Reid. He's running the ship. He's in charge. We've heard from years Bieniemy should be a head coach. Bieniemy should be a head coach. Critics say, well, great, you have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. You can't screw that up. That's like screwing up a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You can't. What should we expect from the Redskins? And is Eric Bieniemy a good offensive coordinator, or is he the guy who, hey, you get Patrick Mahomes, that's like, getting a bar of gold. You cannot, mess that up.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is that we don't know. We can't really know for sure if Eric Bieniemy is actually a good offensive coordinator or not. We know we had the comments with Shady McCoy talking about that Bieniemy did absolutely nothing. maybe there's some truth to that. Also, maybe, Shane McCoy, it was notable that he was not happy in his tenure with that 6 weeks or whatever it was with Kansas City. So I don't know if we can really take everything he's saying as fact either. But here's what I will say. There's always this debate about, is it fair that Eric Bieniemy didn't get a head coaching job after he interviewed so many places, so many times? And I know there's some race conversation about that. I look at the Houston Texans to kind of negate that a little bit. They hired 3 African-American head coaches in a row. They interviewed Eric Bieniemy not once, but twice, and passed him up both times. Now, I don't know what's going on in those interview rooms, but the rumors about him not interviewing well, maybe it's something about his personality. He's an old school guy, or maybe it's that they don't believe he's going to be able to bring that type of creative offense with him. Whatever the case may be, there's something off. There's something. Somebody would have gave him a job if there was something to be impressed by. I've never been impressed by Eric Bieniemy. It's Andy Reid calling the plays. I'm never impressed by offensive coordinators who get head coaching jobs where they were coming off of a system they didn't call the plays. I never understood it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And we see it time and time again, and it never works out. That's what's funny to me. I mean, even Nick Sirianni comes in and first 8 weeks, he was terrible when he was calling the plays. Now, in his defense, to his credit, he turned around, stayed in session, and gave him the play caller duties, and everything got kind of turned around. But most guys won't do that. We saw Nathaniel Hackett. He tried to call plays in Denver, wouldn't give it up. And as soon as he leaves, Denver had its 2 best offensive showings of the 2 last games of the season when he was falling out the door. It doesn't usually work. And now you're in a situation where, okay, we're going to go to Washington Commanders, and you're going to do what? Ron Rivera is already talking about Sam Howell's going to be the starting quarterback. Ooh, I don't know about that one. That is a huge question mark. So you leave Kansas City, where at least on paper you can say, well, statistically, the offense I'm a part of is lighting up the world, regardless of who you want to give credit to. At least you have that going for you. Now you're going to go to Commanders, who don't really have a quarterback to run the ship. You have plotting running backs and a head coach who really wants to go old school and play like this is the 1980s, run on first and second down, throw on third, and we've proven time and time again that doesn't work in today's NFL. And Eric Bieniemy, being a former running backs coach, he might just fall right in line with that. So, again, we don't know for sure. We haven't seen him in that situation. But honestly, my feeling and me reading the tea leaves and what I'm seeing is that I don't think this is going to end very well. Don't forget, they still need new ownership. Ron Rivera, whether they get new ownership or not, very well might be fired at the end of the next season if they once again don't make the playoffs. This is setting up to be a one-and-done situation. And if he gets fired here, I mean, maybe Kansas City brings him back as an offensive consultant, but any chance for a head coaching position goes out the window.
Last question before I let you go, because I know you're busy here. The New York Jets, Jets, last year started off hot. There were fancy darlings with Poochie Hall, with Carter, with defense, and then Wilson basically really screwed the pooch, and the rest of the backup quarterbacks, Flacco was old, and Smith basically got beat up. Who do they get? If you had to put money on them, because you know you got to get a quarterback, is it Derek Carr? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Or is it, and I know that Jets fans are not going to be happy, hello, Jimmy Garoppolo?
So I think Jimmy G would be the last resort. Like if Derek Carr decided he wanted to sign before they were able to find out if Aaron Rodgers would be available, like that type of scenario, then I could see them falling back on a Jimmy G at that point. Which, by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm actually a 49ers fan and probably one of the few advocates for Jimmy G. Didn't want to see Trey Lance this year. Was happy when Jimmy G had to come in for the majority of the season. Was upset when he got hurt. He knows how to win, and more importantly, he knows how to get the ball out to his weapons, which the Jets do have. So I don't think that would be a horrible scenario, but I do think that's the last resort scenario. To me, it's down to Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr, and it's just down to, okay, Green Bay, are you willing to trade him? Aaron, are you willing to go to New York? And if that's the case, I do think a trade will get worked out. If they decide, but if Aaron Rodgers comes back and decides, you know what, I'll play for Green Bay and I'll buy in. Like that's the big thing Green Bay wants him to do. They want him to buy into the offseason program. I'll buy in. I'll show up for OTAs. Maybe he'll make it this is my last year. I'll just go 100% all in, and then everything will be fine in Green Bay. In that case, if Derek Carr is still on the market, I do very much believe it would be Derek Carr. But the key thing is going to be, does Derek Carr decide to sign somewhere before Aaron Rodgers is officially known as available or not? That's going to be the key for the New York Jets. So I think it's between those two, with Jimmy G being the last resort. But regardless, the good news for the Jets is they're going to come out with a better quarterback than they had last year. And if they get any kind of improvement, should be a playoff team.
All right, have it, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, it's the fantasy football expert here, but you don't know it, but you're gonna, because he is doing great stuff. I give you from once again, Belly Up Fantasy Football. I'll give you Dan Maderff. Dan, before we let you go, where can people check you out at? Where is the website? Where is the Twitter page? Where is the YouTube channel? Where can fans get their fantasy stats from so they can win fantasy football games?
Yeah, I think the question at this point is, where can you not find us at? Yeah, we're everywhere. I hosted the MD's Fantasy Football Show, which is a part of the Belly Up Sports Network. We are available on social media at Belly Up MDFF Show. If you go to TikTok or you go to our YouTube, you just put in at MDFF Show. I kind of like that YouTube's doing that now. They do the at thing to make it a little bit easier to find people. We'll pop right up. Make sure you follow us there. Make sure you follow us at MD's Fantasy Football on Instagram. We're putting up video content right now on those platforms. We will be back for our first full live episode on March 2nd at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. We will be live on our YouTube channel. It will be available later on your favorite podcast app, which we're available, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, pretty much anywhere you need to go. So just look for the MD's Fantasy Football Show. Give us a shout out. You can always comment in. You ask us any kind of questions that you need. We'll help you out during those live shows. We'll be talking about the injury inquiry. So all the significant fantasy football injuries heading into the 2023 season and what those players' outlooks could be, with Mr. Brian Scott of the Injured List podcast, our medical expert for that. And we had the big thing we have coming up actually in April that I want to start putting out there now. It'll be our third annual NFL draft coverage. So we have commercial free. We have over 50 guests. We cover all of the first round, and we cover all of the second and third round on the second day as well. So it's a great time. What we do is we live bet the drafts. We try to win you guys some money as it's going on. We got NFL draft analysis for you, and of course, dynasty and fantasy football on the fly analysis with all kinds of personalities. So we'll be doing that for the third year. I can't wait for that, and a lot of big things coming up this season for sure. And we'll be at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton in August.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I give you from Belly Up Sports Fantasy Football. It's none other than Dan Maderff. We come back. A lot more going on here, only on its Last Call. Last Call with the Alcohol, only on the Last Call YouTube channel.